Good afternoon and welcome to TalkSports. It's our weekend program where we speak with the movers and shakers in sports, the sportsmen, sportswomen, sports administrators, coaches, just about everyone who is involved in sports. Well, as indicated, our guest this afternoon, this weekend, is the former president of the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee. He's also the former president of the Caribbean Association of National Olympic Committees. He is currently the Secretary General of CANOC, that's the Caribbean Association of National Olympic Committees. And he's also a board member of the Sports in Integrity, Governance, blah, blah, blah. Well, we'll hear quite a bit about that. He's a member of the Permanent Committee on Gender, Race, Inclusion and Diversity in Sports. He has been advocating quite a bit on inclusion and all the sorts. And Mr. Brian Lewis is our guest today. He is no stranger to the program. He has been on our program many times before, certainly in his capacity as president of TTOC as well as CANOC, but he's there now speaking because he has been a strong advocate of one, integrity in sports, that's one, and then he has been recently speaking a lot about reparations, especially, and I think it's an interesting issue as it relates to reparation for Caribbean countries as part of the Commonwealth, and things like that, because it has been a topical issue of recent. And Brian, no doubt, has been one who has been advocating for inclusion, for equality for many years. In fact, since before the leaders have got involved, talking about the regional leaders got involved in speaking about that, he has been making that call, even as a Lone Ranger. Let me welcome Mr. Brian Lewis to the program. By the way, Rudian Silvan, our co-host, is also in Toronto. He's standing by. But Mr. Brian Lewis is apparently in a very hot and humid Trinidad and Tobago. Good afternoon to you, Mr. Lewis. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me. I have to assume the fact that I keep getting invited back means that somewhere along the road between you and your listeners, I'm making sense.
No, as they say, you're making a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
some people find it's we come from a society that is very conservative, coming out of slavery, colonialism, and those who believe in neo-colonialism is a big thing. So we tend to dodge and duck having conversation based on the reality of history.
certainly. And one such is that of, as you have been speaking about, reparations, And I want to ask you off the bat, why you believe, Mr. Lewis, that Caribbean countries, and in particular, you say, should, or the Commonwealth Games should, Commonwealth Games should set up a fund to assist Caribbean countries.
Don't call it a fund.
Yeah, a reparations fund. Right, reparations fund, reparation foundation, whatever you want to call it, to deal specifically with the assistance to the development of sports, especially, as you said, youth and youth advancement.
Well, specifically as it relates to the Commonwealth Games Federation, the history of the games is firmly aligned to the British Empire, which itself was firmly aligned to colonialism and slavery. That's documented. Going back to 1860s, John Ashley Cooper, when he first put out the idea about a Commonwealth, a games to build goodwill for the British Empire. And then in 1911, when they had a festival to celebrate King George, one of the King Georges, his coronation. And then in the early days, iterations, it was called the British Empire Games. So how those who wish to avoid that truth, that's their call. So that is a reality that as you criticize Saudi Arabia, etc., for sport washing, let's understand that the Commonwealth Game Federation and the Commonwealth Game was about sport washing. So, notwithstanding the fact that the UK government has not to date apologized for the inhumanity and the crime against humanity and the genocide of slavery. Again, that's a choice they make. But I firmly believe that if you look outside of sports, people like Hillary Beckles, the president of Guyana, is President Afan Ali, um, you know, Dr. Keith Christopher Rowley, president of not Prime Minister, sorry, of Trinidad and Tobago. There are leading voices that have been speaking up about it. So, sport, as I said, because of the time of the Commonwealth Games, I think sport administrators must be brave enough.
So, in that context, you think that sports leaders should be around the table discussing reparations as well?
I believe so, strongly believe so. Some may not want to. I have some colleagues who believe they have fallen prey to the position coming out of the former colonialists and slave societies that we need to move past and forget and move on. Um, I always find it interesting because it shows a deficit in trying to embrace and face up to our history. In 1834, when slavery was abolished, and then remember it went on for 4 years with something called apprenticeship. British slave owners, plantation owners got 20 million, I think, UK. And at that time, that was a significant, like 5% of the GDP of UK. And in fact, the bonds or whatever they took to fund that wasn't finally paid until 2015. When you look at what France did to Haiti in terms of the huge monies. So I always find it a little difficult. How I don't have a problem if you come to a conclusion and say, okay, well, we need to drop it. But don't deny the reality of the history. Don't deny the fact that in 1661, in Barbados, the slave code came out, which branded our ancestors less than human. And therefore, heinous crimes were able to be perpetrated against them. That's a fact. Don't deny the fact that economically and financially, the slave trade and the murder of African people across the triangular trade funded the industrial revolution and in fact gave those countries the economic power to continue to impose their systemic and racist and sexist structures and ideologies that is now institutionalized.
But wouldn't you think that our regional leaders will have a big say in terms of advocating? Because it's just Brian Lewis and
No. Well, if I may jump in to correct you have people like Sir Hillary Beckles, as I said. You have the president of Guyana, Afan Ali. You have Dr. Rowley, the Prime Minister of
Yeah.
Trinidad and Tobago, Mia Motley, Prime Minister. So it's not to say that political leaders, if you want to say, aren't vocal. My focus is I'm not going there. I'm saying because of the unassailable and irrefutable history of the Commonwealth Games, there is a reality that we must challenge the Commonwealth Games Federation. The Commonwealth Games is having an election coming up in November in Singapore. And I would like Caribbean in particular sport leaders to challenge those who are putting themselves up for office on the issue of that reparation fund.
And that is where I was heading, specifically as it relates to sports, right? I know there are other voices as it relates to the bigger picture of reparations. I know, for example, in Grenada, there is actually a committee, as it deals with that. But I'm looking specifically in terms of sports and whether or not you think that there should be added voices to the issue of the reparations fund.
Of course. And but it is a level of consciousness and awareness that let's focus on the Commonwealth sport leaders and the Commonwealth sport movement in the Caribbean must front up. At the end of the day, when leaders, and sport is no exception, when leaders fail to grasp the opportunities for change, as radical as they may seem, or as uncomfortable as they may seem, remember, the people who are ultimately punished for the lack of progress is the youth and young people, the generations to come and the generations yet unborn. And I always have a belief, maybe it is because I grew up in the 60s and 70s, and you had examples and role models like Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Fidel Castro, regardless of what you may feel, Mahatma Gandhi, Nelson Mandela, and here closer to the Caribbean, you had a number of people, and there are enough examples in terms of the Black Power Revolution here in Trinidad and Tobago, Mr. Rodney from Guyana. So at the end of the day, certain steps must be taken. History is replete with people who have stood in the gap for the generations to come to address inequalities and injustices. We can't simply walk around Latida because some of us are beneficiaries of the system. The racist and sexist system. That we because we are beneficiaries, we don't want to change it. We pay lip service to it. We act out very performative, but we don't really give consideration to the young people to come. And it is irrefutable that systemic racism and sexism, at least in the sport industry globally, is still a harsh reality. You just have to, well, in the world of social media, some of it may be fake news, but you just have to look at it. I don't understand why people are comfortable in their comfort zone. Now, I know that is, people say what they expect, but my point is, if you look at the reparation, go on with the history. I don't care what opinion you may have. You're entitled to your own opinion. But let's ground it on the basis of fact and truth of history. The Commonwealth Games was a sport washing tool of the British Empire. Full stop.
you made that comment that the Commonwealth Game Federation, or CGF, as I have it on the monitor there, and the Commonwealth Sport Movement can find the courage to make the uncomfortable choice to do the right thing because it's the right and decent thing to do. And you ended by saying, stop hiding behind the passage of time. You wish to clarify?
Stop hiding behind the passage of time. That is not what we do. We push things under the carpet and hope that in time to come, the 9 days wonder or whatever, that it will be forgotten. You know, and as I said, every day we face the legacy of this injustices and inequalities, whether it be the out of control crisis that is gun violence in the Caribbean, whether it is the economic inequalities that fuel social anger, whether it is the underdevelopment of the Caribbean. Now, as I said, I understand people have different views. I have a colleague, I wouldn't call his name, from the Commonwealth Sport Movement, who told me that, well, it's the governments and them that responsible. Okay, that's a point of view. But I don't know that the governments involved in the Commonwealth Games Federation or the Commonwealth Sport Movement. I mean, I do appreciate that it was a travesty, but she's entitled to her own opinion. To hear Baroness Patrice Scotland, the Secretary General of the Commonwealth Secretariat, who would have been elected with the support of the Caribbean, and she claims to have Caribbean heritage, Dominica, I think. I was taken aback to hear her say that reparations is not on the Commonwealth agenda. And I say that solely because as somebody with Caribbean roots. But obviously, Baroness Patrice Scotland, as a beneficiary of the system, will be reluctant to challenge the system and foster and encourage difficult but necessary conversation. The Commonwealth Games Federation and the Commonwealth Games cannot be divorced from British Empire colonialism and slavery.
Yeah. Well said, I think. Let me bring in our friend from Toronto, Rudian. Certainly, Mr. Lewis's appeal for Reparations Fund, as he says, and by the way, it's something it's not anything of yesterday. I think it's since earlier in the year, if I'm not mistaken, that Mr. Lewis wrote that piece about, I think, somewhere in Cape
But
Verde.
I've been saying that for a while. It's just like the advocacy to get the life ban on the Black American athletes, Vince Matthews and Wayne Collett. Rescinded.
Yeah.
I was beating that drum for a while without support, but I understood the reality of leadership in our conservative environment, that somebody have to stand in the gap and run the gauntlet, so to speak, because there are a lot of silent voices who are afraid to open that kind of road, whether it be reparations, whether it be legal gambling and match fixing, whether it be racism.
Yeah, because I know we have to touch on that whole issue of anti-match fixing and all these issues, which you have been advocating, and even looking at the Trinidad and Tobago scenario, because I know there is something in 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 in, in the pot.
Yeah, well,
Rudian.
we had one of the top coaches of a team who came out and spoke about the allegation. But of course, that was allegations, and the players deserve to benefit from the principles of natural justice and due process. So it's an allegation.
Yeah, Rudian. I think you're muted, Rudian.
My apologies. So, Lewis, it's good to see you again.
Yeah, man, good.
Michael, it's also a pleasure to see you. No, it's definitely a true statement you make. But one of the things that I, over the few years that I've, you know, tying into the Commonwealth concept, it's education. And if people are not educated on certain things, it's hard to fight something. And people also go with comfort too. The generation coming up, if it's not an issue to them, then they leave it alone. And I think this is something that I've seen in the past, not only in the Commonwealth, but with a lot of other federations, those who is in power. If it's not affecting them, leave it alone. If there's any issues in it, leave it alone. So I think a big part of it is being educated on where we come from to where we at now, and what is lacking and what we are missing, and what the unfair and the injustice to us as Caribbean and people. And I really think that too. It doesn't, like, I see that people who is in high position who claim they're Caribbean descent, not even trying to fight for us at the same time.
Yep. Yep.
Okay. Mr. Lewis, you touch on the issue as it relates to the whole issue of in Trinidad and Tobago, and I will put there that where you, as the chairman of the Sport Integrity Global Alliance,
Co-chairman.
the
These
co-chairman, sorry.
Europeans, right?
Yeah.
Co-chairman of
Yeah.
the Sport Integrity Global Alliance, SIGA, Gender, Race, Inclusion, and Diversity.
Right.
Committee.
That is what I have up there. I think I have it correctly now.
No, that's all right. I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
That people understand.
And there has been a call by you for the T&T Football Association, TNTFA, to address allegations urgently of match fixing that have been brought to them. Give us an insight into what really is happening there and why you have made that call.
Well, let me be very careful, right? I have to stick with allegations. I'm not aware of the process that would have applied in terms of if Travis Mullery, the coach, a former national player, would have made an official report to Guaya United, and that Guaya United would have made an official report to the TTFA, which at that point would get FIFA fined. Well, what I'm saying that is not to hide behind process, but process is important because there are some questions that will need to be addressed in terms of, I'm just saying, even for academic completeness. If the league was sanctioned by TTFA, what is the relationship between the players and the club? Is it contractual? And if it is contractual, what is the nature of that contract? And as I said, if the competition was sanctioned by TTFA, what does TTFA have in place to address manipulation of competition, illegal sport betting, and the match fixing? And remember, match fixing, as both of you will know, so I don't want to come across like I'm lecturing, right? Illegal sport betting and match fixing, if you Google it, is a $1 trillion US industry. It is very steep globally in organized crime that ties back into money laundering, human trafficking, tax evasion. bribery, corruption, physical intimidation, and violence. So it is not only to do with outcome. I've heard people say, well, Trinidad and Tobago, nobody is studying Trinidad and Tobago. That is the furthest thing from the truth. Don't tell me nobody is studying the league in Jamaica, whether it be senior football, women's football, or collegiate football. Not only Jamaica, I'm saying, of course, let's deal with the Caribbean. Because you have to appreciate, this is about a pure bet. These people are not, and the people who bet, wager, aren't necessarily supporters of the sport or a team. They are supporters of wagering, betting. They may have an addiction. So the real money in the global environment is what they call the side bet. So, because remember, okay, I'm just saying, if, I just call in a name, forgive me, right? If Italy, that might be a bad choice. If one of the top European players, Germany, etc., play in Trinidad and Tobago, let's use that as an example. The outcome is almost, even though it is unpredictable, it's not unpredictable, right? Trinidad and Tobago is likely to lose, right? The odds will favor Germany.
The European.
Right. So where's the opportunity? The opportunity will come who get the first corner, who get a penalty, who get the first throw in, who missed the first goal. If you do the research, you and Rudian is the proper pronunciation of his name. Right?
Yes.
You will, if you dig down and do a deep dive in the match fixing ring, you'll be surprised. And I know for Trinidad and Tobago, we are we don't like to hear, but we are waging society. You know, whether it go back historically to cockfighting, we have
because I wanted to add,
we have playway, etc. So,
playway,
and let me say, sorry, let me say that it is not that all sport betting is illegal. Far from it. There is legal sport betting. As a matter of fact, if you look at whether it's the CPL, Premier League, betting, legitimate, legal, lawful betting agencies are now getting front of shirt. So that presents a particular dilemma, which is a whole different discussion, Rudy and Michael, in that because of the addictive nature of gambling, is it that eventually at some particular point in time, it will have to be treated like alcohol advertisement? And one final thing before I go. In Trinidad and Tobago, the Betting and Gambling Act, which governs gaming, was significantly amended it was a 2015, amended in 2021. And in 2022, around March, April, a gaming commission was appointed. We know that the act was assented to. Was the act fully proclaimed is subject for the attorneys to discuss. So in terms of the particular area of illegal betting marketing allegation, you have the two streams in terms of club via TTFA, FIFA, CONCACAF, and then you have the role of the Gaming Commission of Trinidad and Tobago. It may not be the same in Canada, in the USA, where you are Jamaica or throughout the Caribbean. It may or may not be the same.
Because, Mr. Lewis, therefore, people hearing about that will certainly want to, and I'm glad you brought the example as playway and all these things, because you know that probably 15, 20 years ago, horse racing betting, for example, because we even had folks in Grenada who will go and do their betting on a weekend for horse racing in Trinidad, right, in particular.
And Tobago.
Well, Trinidad and Tobago, yes, because they will have there as well. So that may be a bit confusing for others. And then we have a recent where we have even players themselves. In the case of, I know cricket, I think was Marlon Samuels was one example, and there were others who have been involved in what they call match fixing and all.
And then Trinidad had 2 footballers banned for life by FIFA.
Right. So how do all these things mix in, and what would you say will be the solution in going forward, especially in the Caribbean region? Do we need regulations? We know here in North America, for example, there are legalize betting and all these things, even at the stage of probably even to the college level, I think, to some extent. So what do you think in going forward we should do, especially in the Caribbean?
Well, the first thing, if you go back to the Alcoholic Anonymous and Gambling Anonymous and all those addiction dealing organizations, they start off by saying you have to first admit that you have a problem. So if we continue to deny that there is a problem, then it will grow just like gun violence to become a crisis situation. And as we all know, the old people saying, once you're going down the slippery slope, pulling it back is always a challenge. So I would say the conversation need to be, are we going to continue to deny it happens? Is it that fear is driving it? Because these are illegal betting and match fixing is not necessarily done by legal people. It's done by a mindset of criminality. It is also important to understand that it's considered high profit, low risk, because the international betting syndicates, wherever they may be and however they do it, operate and look for environments where, so if you look at the Caribbean, I'm just saying, if you take a sport like football, it is still mainly amateur, semi-professional at best. So even if you have a professional league, the remuneration, the way the players are treated, the honoring contracts may not be what it should be. So that creates an incentive for young, vulnerable players to seriously consider and accept a revenue stream. I was telling somebody just yesterday, okay, so if you believe, people believe it's this white line, right? This line. And it's either, I said if that was the case, but maybe you're too young to mention, to remember, but I wasn't throwing shade at the person. I'm not saying that you all are too young. I was saying the person I was speaking to. As the cricketers went to South Africa, because at the time, the remuneration on offer in the context of what they were getting was at that point crumbs versus cheese. So I say that to simply say, and it's not a knock on these guys. I also have a reality, and I've said it internationally, that corruption for the developed world is eating our food in other places in the world. And you have to understand that, because if you don't understand that there are a number of factors that drive criminality in the Caribbean, and I dare say again, the straight line, as the United Nations Secretary said, there is a straight line between slavery and the economic inequalities and social inequalities and justice the world is now facing. He said that too. That's not just Hilary Beckles, Brian Lewis, Mia Motley, Irfan Ali, and others. Dr. Rowley. There is a line. It is generational. And as I said, I respect people's views and their right to express it, but history is very clear and incontrovertible. Forget it.
So, as Secretary General of CANOC, Caribbean Association of National Olympic Committees, pushing back the question to you, what do you suggest we can do in going forward? And as one of the leading advocates for social justice, equality, etc., what are your suggestions?
Well, I believe, and we will see that in the coming days and weeks, that the CANOC will be a facilitator of needed conversation That is all I can say at this point in time in terms of CANOC. There's a general assembly in Barbados. CANOC is the theme for CANOC since last year. Beyond possible. This is our 20th year, and CANOC has been through the ups and downs. And CANOC is very well aware that in the modern environment, sports leaders and administrators and decision makers are being challenged like never before. But that being said, the responsibility is on sport leaders to be aware and awoke.
Well, yeah, I love that. Aware and awoke, because it's um, it's very important in certainly in going forward. But it's um, it's something too that we need to get on the agenda of our regional leaders, because I think it was help me, Rudy, and who it was that was on our program that believed that I'm trying to recall that sports should be, and I think that may be the disadvantage, because our regional leaders do not put sports on the agenda or speak of sports in the context of how they may speak about um, political unification and all these other
Yeah.
things. Do you think, Mr. Lewis, that we need more leaders to be talking about sports, and not just when probably Trinidad and Tobago wins a medal at the Olympic Games, or win a football match or something like that? So, but that they must be talking about sports and how sports can be used. And I think you mentioned that about a year and a half ago, how they can use sports as a vehicle, particularly as it relates to socioeconomic issues. You talk about, for example, violence. I remember it was a year ago, you talk about using sports to deal with the issue of youth violence and all these things. But do you think we need that political will, Mr. Williams?
No, and that
No?
is because no, and that is because sport is still seen as a sweat, a pastime, recreational and leisure. We haven't really embraced the complexity of the global sports industry that affords our youth and young people an opportunity to earn sustainable, to come out of poverty and earn a sustainable living. I mean, in recent times, I have oriented more to the use of sport policy and sport from a diplomatic perspective in the truest and broadest sense of the word. So that has given me an additional focus in terms of the use of sport to make a positive difference.
All right. Well, we're still hopeful that regional leaders will be able to catch on, Rudian. I think we spoke about about it a couple of times, and hopefully, just as well, you know how important it is for the Canadian society in particular, not just hockey, but how we see in other sports, whether it's football, whether it's various sports in itself, that our Caribbean leaders will see the importance of sports. Rudian?
Yeah, most definitely. If you look at the European countries, especially the United States, sport is a big issue, and in certain areas, from my experience, they use sports to help the youths, by using those athletes, to speak to the young ones and to give back in some ways. But in the Caribbean, we don't see that as the same way. They don't see sport as that figure that can make that change. And I think that have to change, within the society and within the system, um, that it can do that. And I could call back in, when Grenada won the first medal with Kirani. At that time in Grenada, it was rough, and just in that moment, that medal, winning that medal, feel a sense of hope and pride for the country, which was really needed at that time. in Grenada. It was just feel like it was a rough time where you hear of so many things happening, and that just changed the mindset of people on how much I love Grenadian at that time, or how much we love Grenada. I'm a so those things you really do help, but they do have to see that change for sports within the Caribbean. Definitely have to, and even going back to the with the sports betting and the gambling in the sport is the same thing too. We do see that a lot. I heard about it in some smaller islands in the Caribbean, but and I heard about it in the past year. It's been a while since I hear about it here in Canada and within the United States, because it's not saying it's not harder now. It could be more challenging for them because it is an illegal. You could actually go to jail for those athletes now to get involved.
Hold on. William, let me ask you what you just said there. It is harder. Sport betting is legal in about a number of jurisdictions in the state.
No, I'm not talking about in terms of gambling and stuff. I'm talking about the athlete losing games, like match fixing. Okay. Yeah, that's mainly what I'm going with. Yeah, not necessarily in terms of the gambling aspect, because the gambling aspect is a financial to them. A lot of the money comes from gambling, because now you can gamble on anything that move, so and that's a money for them. But then I come back again, like here in Canada, the money don't go back to the athletes. It don't go back in the sport. And that could be a big challenge too, because I've seen it here, especially in specific sports here in Canada. The money do not go back into the sports. But yet, like you said, Michael, I said they want the medals. They want the wins. They want to win, but then I put in the money back into the sport, or at least a portion of it, to help the athletes move forward. And that was the challenge in the early days, where athletes, it's not making that money where they have to miss a free throw, to lose the game, or a match fixing because they're getting something else on the sidelines. But you can see now in baseball, in basketball, in football, the millions of dollars. Players, easy for them to sit on the bench and make a $10 million. So you're not like previously, where they could just sell the game and they make something on the side, something better than what they're getting. But today it could be a little bit more challenging for in the sense of match fixing. To that, I remember two basketball championship ago, they were talking about something with one of the NBA refs who was, had either he was following somebody or a team or something to that extent, and he was investigated in a finals. And, of course, they come and say it was, match fixing and so forth. So it is really tougher now than it used to be in the old times.
Yeah, well, so, even now we have, there's, stricter rules, because, for example, there's some sport, for example, where certain officials are not allowed to speak about their participation. For example, some officials for boxing, for example, because boxing has been engaged in a lot of match fixing and corruption and what have you. So they're not allowed to say where they will be or what they will be officiating. I think even FIFA, for example, I know a referee who told me that they will not know who is a referee until a certain time. I think it's 24 hours or 48 hours, something to that effect. Would be published as the referee for the final, especially in a tournament where you have a pool of referees, right? They will decide who's the referee at a particular time. All these things are rules and engagements to ensure that there is fairness because of what has happened over the years. But Mr. Lewis, you have been engaged, and again, I'm saying, because you have been an advocate against, racial and gender-based discrimination, you have been engaged probably every month in some sort of conference or some sort of presentation. One such was, I think, earlier in the year, had to do with the role of diplomacy in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs we have been hearing a lot about, whether it's the Commonwealth, whether it's the United Nations, the 2030 agenda. Do you think we are achieving? Do you think we are any closer to achieving those goals?
Well, the Sustainable Development Goals,
Sustainable development goals, as it relates to,
because
I think you,
to say, but I think
but I think you were
far
speaking
from it.
most.
You seem to be receding.
But I think you were speaking more so on sport diplomacy, right?
Yeah.
But
right.
How it relates?
Well, sport don't operate in a vacuum, and sport mimics life. So the same challenges that they're facing on the whole, competing interests, whether it's those who agree with climate change, global warming, it's an ongoing tussle, which again, I always say, if you look at the way the economic structure of the world and the financial structure of the world is set up, it's the same plantation model from slavery. And I saw the African countries and the Caribbean countries calling for that in terms of a seat at the table. But that's a whole different thing. The answer to your question is that if we're not taking sports seriously as a driver of dealing with non-communicable diseases and obesity and vascular dementia and all of these things that are lifestyle and diet-related issues, and we're not using sport to address crime in a powerful way, and then to create that economic ecosystem. When you look at the monies athletes, I was looking and seeing this guy from, I think it's Liverpool, he's from Egypt, Saleh. I don't know, you all know better how to pronounce his name. Saleh.
Yeah, from Egypt. Yeah.
Egypt, yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I was seeing something across my thing today, where he was allegedly making £1 million a week. You hear it better than that, Ridan? And Michael, £1 million a week. That's $10 million or $9 million in terms of Caribbean money, depending on what is my point. The point is that because we need to accelerate how we look at sport, we could create an environment where, I'm not saying everybody, like everything else, you have the 1% and 2%. Enough people to make sport seem much more viable, much more sustainable than it is. I wanted to make one other quick point in terms of illegal sport betting and match fixing. The other aspect of it that flies below the radar is that most of these global betting that takes place will use pirated footage and intellectual property, right? I mean, if that is a legitimate arrangement with a legitimate sport betting agency, right? Like how CPL had all these people on the brand. But I'm saying in the context of illegal sport betting and match fixing and the illegal use of the intellectual property of whichever league it is, remember that's an asset. And what it does, it compromises the opportunity, whether it is cricket, football, or whoever, to monetize their intellectual property. Again, that's another aspect of it. We're just going along, la-ti-da, and not understanding the complexities and the depths of the sport, the global sport, financial and economic ecosystem.
Yeah. There's the other issue I wanted to raise, even though you mentioned it briefly at the start, and it has to do with, well, same thing with your your advocacies. I think it was the American athlete Vince Matthews, and then you also talk about Wayne Collett, right? Wayne Collett, yeah.
He died, so that's why.
Yeah,
we rescinded the life ban after 50 years. In December 2022, Wayne Collett didn't apparently benefited, but I felt it would have been good for the great IOC to.
So, but I think is it fair to say that you successfully lobbied the IOC to rescind that live ban on these guys?
I wouldn't use the word successfully lobbied. I became a pain. I was relentless and vocal in pressing for it. Like you have to do with anything. Change doesn't come on a one-off. Change is hard work. Hard work. If you want to change how sports is addressed, we need to be at it. It's going to have more down days than good days. Why I say that? Because when I look at that whole process with that Vince Matthews and Wayne Collett situation, not even the great U.S. Olympic Committee picked up the fight. I could have said at any point in time, listen and just hush the hell up, because I had colleagues, in the Caribbean was saying that, listen, man, you're making things difficult for us. Why don't you shut the hell up? Leave that alone. But when the decision was made, like everything else, everybody felt it safe to come out of it, and congratulate, and that's good. Because as a leader, you have to understand sometimes that it's a lonely road if you're trying to change something, and there's an agreement internally that, okay, Michael is the voice for it, and he will fight that battle. It don't make sense really and getting involved in it, because it could heighten the risk of the organization and the effort. So we have one person fighting it. It's understood if you get licked up, you taking one for the team. Michael could take one for the team. So whatever his career wouldn't happen, you wouldn't get whatever that's expected. But that's the price we have to pay for. That's the price we have to pay for progress. You look through the history, no progress was made without a price.
Right. And talking about the price for progress, would you agree with our friend from Toronto, Lincoln Depredine, that the only real mover and shaker the Caribbean ever had in international sports administration was your countryman, Uncle Jack Warner?
People don't like to hear me say that, but yeah. Jack Warner there's a number of books produced by Jack Warner, written by Valentino Singh. I read it because I always tell people, we focus, okay? Some people say, we focus too intensely on what is wrong, rather than learn it. So we miss lessons. There's a lot that Jack Warner did right. I wasn't there, so I can't verify and add to the different things people have said. What I know is it could not have been easy for Jack Warner to achieve what he achieved in FIFA, because FIFA is as European and racist and sexist as they come. So Jack Warner outthought FIFA, and in that is a lesson.
Yeah.
Some people will feel that there are other lessons they can learn, but as I said, I tend to focus. You see, if I may, without going off on a lecture platform, right? I make leadership a study. So for me, people will criticize Hitler, as Osama bin Laden. I don't get into, it have everybody focusing on those lessons already, right? How were they able to do what they did? How would they able to motivate people? Okay, it might have been whatever, but the point is, what are the lessons? Good, bad, or different. Jack Warner, Austin Jack Warner, as a black man from rural Trinidad and Tobago, say what you want to reach to the heights of the European dominated FIFA. There are lessons there in leadership, there are lessons in strategy. You know, we lose a lot of lessons because of judgment. So, for example, reparation and all these things that people say, Brian Lewis again, you always quarreling about something. You always arguing about something. No, it's true. Oh God, Brian, leave that now, boy.
But do you get frustrated? Do you get frustrated?
Once or twice I may say, boy, this not making sense, no. You know, my wife, my children, gosh, you know. But I always believe I grew up single parent in Belmont. And my mother worked very hard. So and my siblings, the four of us as the eldest therefore, stood on her shoulders and the village that raised me, good, bad, or indifferent. And I understood in those days the importance of paying it forward, the importance of not pulling up the ladder, right? When you get an opportunity. Because at the end of the day, self interest and selfishness leads to hubris. And a lot of times when you are trying to facilitate change, you have to come out of a comfort zone. And in fact, you may compromise your upward mobility. You may aggravate people. You know, I was once told in a Caribbean forum that I'm not the most well liked, but I may probably be respected. How well respected, I'm not getting into that because at the end of the day, one of the things my dear departed mother, who was my hero, always said to us, what people think of you is not your business. If you believe in doing something, don't worry, do it. You know, if you save one life or you make a positive difference for one youth, young people, don't worry, that's one life you have changed. And then maybe that person will, based on that example and experience, change someone's life. And that is what we don't see. Some of us will never understand why Nelson Mandela sat down in Robben Island for 27 years, 18 in solitary confinement, or why Malcolm X and Martin Luther King and Mahatma Gandhi had to sacrifice their lives. You know, when you come down through the course, Walter Rodney, you know, Stokely Carmichael, Kwame Ture, really like him and Fidel Castro, Che Guevara, Makanda Daga, you know. I'm simply saying that all of us, you, Julian, we are walking on the shoulders of our ancestors. The fact that we are here, okay, I'm a mix between Asian and straight back to Africa and the family's father's side. But I've never lost touch and sight of the fact that everything we know benefit, whether it's carnival, whether it's this, that, or the other. Millions, 12 million Africans were put into slavery and sent down to the Caribbean. Documentary things say 1.8 were thrown overboard. You understand that? A lot of blood, sweat, and tears went into us being here. And we can't just sit down in a corner and eat the fruits of that blood, sweat, and tears and not pass it on. And that's my biggest issue with some of my colleagues in sport leadership in particular.
So it goes back to, as we get ready to wrap up there, to something you said at the start of the program, well, somewhere to the start, as it relates to, and you know, it's ties in with what you made mention of the folks like Jack Warner and others, that in European countries, for example, what is considered eater food is corruption in the Caribbean and other third world countries.
No, Michael. What Europeans and the
Yeah.
developed world consider corruption is eater
Well,
food.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. They will look at
Okay.
it as in the Caribbean as corruption, but for them it's almost like, as you say, eater food. Okay, and as Lincoln is adding, he says Jack Warner became the poster child for FIFA corruption because he was black from a poor community in a third world tropical country. He was bold and unafraid to duke it out with powerful white folks
White folks.
who have the BBC and other European and North American media behind them. Blatter alleged wrongdoings pale in comparison to what European officials have stolen from FIFA. And I guess as much, it's kind of basically what you're summarizing there.
No, what I've said is, and let me clarify, I've said we need, when we are looking at history, to look at what are the takeaways we could learn from, however you interpret that.
Right.
And not focus on the gossip and the rumor and the moving along and all the necessary. At the end of the day, Jack Warner was a black man in a white world. All right? I'm saying his rise, however you have said, take whatever lessons you want to take out from it, but don't diminish it. Don't diminish it. It's the same way you could look at anybody from Marcus Garvey. You know, as I said, I tell people, we have been, I don't want to go off on anything mindful, because we have been so brainwashed. We don't even know our own history. We resent our own history, our black history, we don't teach that in school. Christopher Columbus discovered the New World. The man came here and met indigenous people, and there was genocide. But the white world will criticize genocide everywhere else, but acknowledge it in their own history and not do what is right because it is the right thing to do. The Commonwealth Games Federation needs to set up a Reparations Fund foundation. We need to address issues such as illegal sport betting and match fixing, anti-doping, human trafficking and money laundering, and tax evasion in sport, because what this is doing is criminalizing the aspirations, hope, and dream of our youth and young people on our watch as sport leaders.
Nice way to end that. Very good note indeed. And I think Rudy and I will have learned quite a bit history. And as our friend Toro is saying, which is probably a nice little way to end in a humorous way, Brian, I'm writing to Prime Minister Dr. Rowley. He needs to appoint you to the Trinidad Senate and make you an international ambassador. I will want to.
Don't make business bad for me now. I wherever I'm asked to serve, I will serve. Please. Oh my God.
Right. It's always a pleasure having you. And I think you, by the way, have you ever decided to, are you thinking whatever of, putting pen to paper, writing a book or something? So Brian?
Yeah, I've been asked to do that. I don't know. I'm thinking about it. I've had some good offers from people who I trust and who are very versed in that. But I don't know. I am.
The problem you're having is what you'll write about. I mean, that is
yes.
that. I mean,
yeah. I
what
don't
you'll
think
write about.
People want to see some of the truths in writing and print, because some of them still, have career aspirations and stuff. But let me take this opportunity to thank TalkSports, you and Rudian, because Yeah, the role of the media in addressing and highlighting these issues are very important. And too much of sport is focused on the bacchanal and who say what and who say that, who didn't do that and who did this. And what we are losing, Michael and Rudian, is these bigger issues that are more detrimental to the youth and young people in the region. And I believe that that is how the neo-colonialists have it. They distract us. They make us focus on, basic things because they believe that that's how we are. We easily distracted, that we can't wrap our heads around deep, profound issues that have a greater impact on the youth and young people of the Caribbean and Trinidad and Tobago in sport.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the compliments, Rudy, and I think you will as well.
No, most definitely. Kindly, you want to say thank you. I learned so much from you today. A few of the things that I didn't know, but one thing that you said clearly is, and I go back to what I'm saying, is teaching the young people or the generation today of where we're coming from, the history of Black people, and I think this is what's lacking. And I've spoken with a teacher who's a very good coach also in Grenada who said the same thing. A lot of things they don't teach anymore like we used to, and I think that is the failure that is upon us today when we see the behavior of some of our young people is because they don't know where we come from. They don't know how we get here, or the sacrifice, or the blood and sweat and tears that comes to where we at now. And that also is a big effect on sports as well. So truly, thank you for that. And if you really could put a book together, please do. It will help a lot of people. Like I said, there will be the biasness, people thinking you're talking foolishness, and some people, which I think the majority will stand with you and definitely purchase your book, and I'll be one of them.
Yeah, remember, a legacy of empire and colonialism is the miseducation of us as a people.
Yeah.
And that's deliberate and intentional.
Yeah. And certainly that's why when I invite Mr. Lewis to the program, it's more discussion because I allow him to speak because I think it's more, especially for me, it's a learning process. So it's not so much an interview, but as I always say, it's a discussion or conversation because every time we bring him to the program, we learn something new. Thank you very much, Mr. Lewis, and it's always a pleasure having you, and we look forward to having you sometime in the future.
Thank you very much. Have a blessed weekend. Thank you.
All right, then. Thank you.
You too.
Yeah. So that's Mr. Brian Lewis, who is our guest. Well, was our guest. He's from Trinidad and Tobago, former president of the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee. He's also currently the general secretary, the secretary general, as they will say, of the Caribbean Association of National Olympic Committees. He was also the president of CANOC, and he is a co-chair now of SIGA and the Permanent Committee on Gender, Race, Inclusion, and Diversity in Sports. SIGA is the Sport Integrity Global Alliance, SIGA. Rudian, always a pleasure, and certainly it's a sporting weekend again. I know.
Definitely.
College football, disappointed because I lost a football game today. That's Manchester City. We lost 2-1 against it's a team that is basically struggling, but things do happen. It was a home game, and they basically won. That's Wolves.
Yeah. Wolf. Okay. Yeah. You know, I see about one of the things that I've been saying about sports, and I look at it back in the days, is that some teams they play to the level of the other team, and even though they're a high playing team, they play to that level. So the level of the team might be at 20%, so they drop to 20%, and when they know their self is 100%. So sometimes that happens, but it does hurt when you say, "Hey, better lose to a strong team, not to a weak team," So because that right there boosts that team there right now,
It certainly wasn't a good day for Manchester. because City lost and United also lost. Crystal Palace defeated United 1-0. Well, Arsenal came out with a 4-0 win over Bournemouth, and Aston Villa had a 6-1 victory over Brighton. Some interesting scores indeed, and let's see what will be in store. Well, tomorrow is just Brentford and Nottingham Forest. That's two teams that basically come up to the Premier League. But there's college football, as we know. Then there's NFL. It's back on the this weekend. Should be some high-powered games. Yes, high-powered games. I know the Giants will be playing. That's my home team, so I have to support them.
My Cowboys is playing, so it's I'm a Cowboys fan. I'm a Cowboys.
So, folks, that is it for this weekend. Just to let you know, as of today, 300 days to go for Paris 2024. 300 days to go. Countdown on for Paris 2024 Olympic Games. And
it was good to see Lyndon end up coming third last week.
It was
your pullback.
It was a challenge. It was a challenge, but it's good to see that we made the podium, you know.
So that was good. That was good.
I know it's quite a lot for him because now he has to prepare for the Pan American Games.
For the Pan American Games, so
off season for them, you know. But and then get ready for the 2024 season. You know, it's quite a toll on his body, and that's why he has been saying that he really needs the support. He needs to have the team around him, but he needs to have a team around him.
Do you know if does he do indoors?
No, not competitively. I think the indoors he will do is just to get himself
individual
like pole vault and these sort of things
and so forth. Individual, okay.
Right, to get himself individual thing like the pole vault and other things.
400 like maybe and so forth,
to get himself ready for the thing. But I know specifically with the pole vault, he and his brother did a couple indoors before, and it was particularly preparatory work, you know.
Definitely.
All right, so that's all for this weekend.
That was I didn't even see that there were Spice Girls played any more games. I didn't even really get to see that.
No, well, they only played the home game last weekend and they won that game. So they defeated the Bahamas twice, both home and abroad. I don't know what your boy want. Give an update on Canada football.
Canada football. Well, the Argonauts is doing well. Okay, let's leave it like that. The Argonauts is doing very well. The number one, and that for me is my team out here. You know, so that's really good. Yeah.
Well, other than that too, we have the ECCB netball. The ECCB netball opens this afternoon. In fact, it's at I think it's 3:30 in Antigua. So there is the netball series, and let me just see if I can pull up some information that I can give you there regarding, because I think today is the 30th, right? So we have the opening at 3:30 p.m. and then at 5:30 St. Vincent and the Grenadines versus the Cayman Islands. At 5:45 is Montserrat versus St. Lucia. 7:30 p.m. Antigua and Barbuda, that's the home team. They're coming up against Dominica. And the final game on the opening day will feature St. Kitts and Nevis and Grenada from 7:45 p.m. So that's the schedule for today. The opening of the ECCB International Netball Series taking place in Antigua. Opening ceremony at 3:30 this afternoon, right? So that's netball. I know there's football, Premier League football on in Grenada. You can check the GFA Facebook page for all the information regarding the schedule. And I believe some of the, I don't know if they're still doing it, but I remember some of the matches were being streamed. So I assume they probably have a feature game that's probably been streamed. Yes, so that's and then finally, I just want to give another plug for our dear friend, our late friend, I should say. I think we spoke about it last weekend. That's the 5th annual Kellen Batiste Memorial
Yeah.
Football Game. The Kellen Batiste Select 11 versus Real Old Men FC. That's coming up next Saturday. That's October 7th, 4 p.m. Montrouge playing field. And it's being presented by the Kellen Batiste Foundation Incorporated. As you know, Kellen Batiste played football for Grenada, represented Grenada both at the junior and the senior level for many years as a national goalkeeper, and passed away a few years ago. In his honor, in his memory, there's the Kellen Batiste Memorial Match, where basically they use it to raise funds to continue the work of the foundation. And I want to thank you, Kyron, for keeping his legacy alive. It's his brother, Kyron Batiste. Thank you very much, Rudy, and thank you, everyone, for
It's a
being part of
pleasure,
the program.
as usual.
Always a pleasure being here. And hopefully, we'll be around for next Saturday, God's willing. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Okay, then. So that's all for this weekend, folks. It's always a pleasure having you, and hopefully, we'll be around for next Saturday. Information will be provided as to our guests or our topics for discussion next Saturday, same time at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Until then, I do want you to have a pleasant weekend.